Welcome to Stoughton Spotlight. I'm your host, Jeffrey Pickette. On this episode, I'll be giving you an update of the Stoughton High building project. There are 3 important benchmarks to be met this coming school year for the project, and I'll be sitting down with 3 members of the Stoughton High Building Committee to give you the details. But first, let's go on a tour of the existing facility so you can see the condition of the current building. So I'm here with Joel Harding, the Director of Maintenance and Operations for the Stoughton Public School System, and we're starting this tour on the A4th part of the building, which is infamous for students and parents alike who have either gone through this school system or have sent their kids through this school system. We are in the oldest part of the building right now. This building was constructed in 1923.
Correct.
And when you walk on the floors, you might not be able to see this on television, you get the creaks, and this really is a throwback. And this floor right here actually poses a significant issue currently for the students and staff at Stoughton High School, especially if there's anybody with disabilities or they break a leg during the school year or are on crutches. So kind of talk about that a little bit.
It is not accessible at all. We do not have an elevator to this level. This is, as you mentioned, the 4th floor. This is the only building, and we'll get into why I call it buildings, that has a 4th floor. So if any student has a class up here that is taking place and has to be on crutches or in a wheelchair or something, we have to move that class down to a lower level so that student has access to that class. So that's one of the challenges of this building. As you mentioned, the noisy floors as people move through the corridors. We've also had an issue with the masonry wall. We've had to reinforce the masonry walls here in the A building on several occasions because of movement of the masonry. So there are several challenges to this building alone.
And one I'm noticing right now talking to you is the acoustics in here. Very echoey, and I could see that causing a problem in terms of education up here. This is in the English department, has their classrooms up here.
Correct, especially when students are moving through the corridors. You'll get the echoing off the walls, off the ceiling. You'll get the squeaky floors. So it's a considerable challenge.
Well, let's start a tour up here, and you can show us around and maybe in some of the classrooms.
Sure. So in this situation, actually, if you can take a shot of the floor, we've actually taken the wood floor up here and put vinyl tile down. But many of the classrooms you'll see up here in A4 still have the wood floors, which again cause an issue as far as students moving around, keeping them clean, keeping them maintained, et cetera, et cetera. So everything has been retrofitted in the A building. All of our Wi-Fi and IT materials had to come up, be retrofitted. The heating system had to be retrofitted. Lighting all had to be retrofitted into this building. This building wasn't designed for smart boards. And as you look through the building too, you see all the fire alarm had to be retrofitted, the intercom system. So everything's surface mounted because it's all retrofitted. So again, we're in A200 area. This was the original main entrance of the high school. It's now the high school administrative offices. But again, as we walk through, you'll see everything has to be retrofitted. It's old construction, obviously, from 23. Just as an aside, this building is a wood frame building. The rest of the building is steel frame, but the A building is still a wood frame building. Masonry on this side of the building has become so porous. There is constant damage, constant issues in these classrooms, and an area down in guidance, which we'll look at in a little while, that whenever it rains, we have water infiltrating into the building. So we're inside the existing media center / library for the high school. It's my understanding that this used to be the cafeteria / gymnasium for the original building, and has been converted, but you can see how low the ceilings are in the old gym. So I'm not sure how much gym time the kids got at that time. So.
What's the current issues with the media center right now as it pertains to its current use?
Well, again, if you could look around here, there's a wall right here. So you don't have any sight lines for trying to see the entire media center. It's, again, had to be retrofitted for any time we want any type of IT equipment, the computers, the smart boards, the things like that, all had to be retrofitted. We have, again, this in this area over here, there's just a one-story above us, and of course that roof leaks, and we need a new roof. At some point, we're going to need a new roof on the whole building. So those are just some of the issues that we're dealing with.
So we're continuing our tour, and we're still in the A building, but in a part where most people, actually few if any, students or teachers for that matter, would be going down here. Where are we in the A building, Joel?
We're in the basement of the A building, which was the original boiler room for the A building. It is now housing one of our emergency generators, and also the transformers, the National Grid transformers for all the electrical for the whole building is down here. There's also a walkway, if you can turn around and point back in that direction. If you see that walkway, that will go into the second boiler room, the B building boiler room, where our newer boilers are. This is just showing the area where the old coal chute was, because this building originally in '23 was fired by coal, was heated by coal.
So we're just about to leave the A building and head into the B building, which built in 1952.
Correct.
And so what are some of the challenges that we should be looking out for in this building?
Some of the similar challenges that we had in the A building, everything had to be retrofitted, from fire alarm, heating, HVAC controls, IT networks, phones, lighting. A lot of the electrical that is in place is original, so it's back from the 1950s, meaning the breaker panels, the breakers, things like that. So a lot of the things, including the HVAC units that you'll see as we walk through, are no longer made. So we cannot get parts for them. So if we need to, if for instance a fan fails in a univent, or a shaft breaks or something, we have to have it machined rather than going out and buying it off the shelf, which is, as you know, considerably more expensive. So that's, we'll head into B200. This is the existing guidance suites. This originally was 3 classrooms that back in 1993, 94, we took down the walls here and built the guidance suite. But we still have some significant issues here. So again, as we're walking along, you can see the evidence of the water infiltration in through the masonry of the B building. This occurs B3rd, B2nd, and of course down into B1st, it runs down through. Over time, this is going to be, it's a significant issue now, but obviously infiltration into your building envelope is not a good thing of having water infiltrated in. So again, this is the clinic for the high school, for 1,000 student high school. See, this is mainly the office area, and then we have the area where they do have the students come in and rest when they're ill. Very minimal. It's quite a challenge for the nursing staff in this building. So this is one of our server rooms. Used to be a closet. We're down here in B100, just to show you where
we have to squeeze everything in wherever we can. Actually, this space is probably hotter than the classroom because it's generating its own heat. So areas that you see where the ceiling tiles are missing is where water has infiltrated down from B3 and B2. And we don't even bother to put ceiling tiles back in them because every time it rains, they just get totally water soaked and usually fall in. So we just come in here with barrels and hampers and put them underneath when it does rain.
So we're in the boiler room right now in B building, again, an area where students and the teachers really aren't going to be during the course of the day.
Right.
But now, not that a room like this would be new and shiny anyways, even in a new building, but just kind of explain the structural challenges that this room presents to you.
Well, obviously, these boilers are from 1988. This building B, building C, and building A are all steam heated versus D and E, which are the newer buildings, which are hot water, have hot water. So steam system is much more finicky, requires much more maintenance, much more hands-on than a hot water system. The steam system in A, B, and C, it's a heat that is very hard to control. So some days you'll come in on the A and B first or second floors, second levels, people will be cold. Up on the A fourth level, the windows will be open. So it's just not, it was a system designed for cheap fuel and didn't have a lot of controls. The buildings don't have a lot of insulation. So over here, A, B, and C, it's very difficult to get everybody in a balance that for the heating systems that everybody agrees to. Again, you can, if you look up and see all the piping, all of the electrical is basically from the 50s. Everything that we're dealing with, if we have to retrofit anything, the materials and parts are no longer available. So those are just some of the challenges.
And so, hearing you correctly, the new boilers are 25 plus years old.
Correct, correct. At some point that these boilers are probably, on the average they say that boilers are good for about 25 years. So they're at the end of their life cycle.
Right. And conceivably, these would be issues that would be fixed in a new or renovated high school.
I would assume that obviously in a new building, all the systems would be new. They would be more modern. They would meet today's codes. Even in a renovated building, you basically would have to strip this all out and start all over again, so that the whatever is left essentially has one boiler room, one power plant, and everything is fed from that one location.
So we're here in the gym now.
Correct.
And back in 2012, the Stoughton High boys basketball team, highly ranked, would have been able to host 2 tournament games. The size of this gym forced them to a neutral site.
Correct.
In round 2.
Correct.
You don't see the bleachers down behind us, but when they are down, they only seat 400.
400, if that, correct.
And the student body is 1,100-ish.
That is correct.
So other than size, which is, there's very little room along the baselines and the sidelines, what are some of the other issues in this?
Well, understand, this, if you look at the gym, this is the only this is one big teaching station. So there's no way to divide this up to allow for smaller teaching stations for inclement weather when people are coming in to, gym classes are coming in, you've got a girls' class, a boys' class, or whatever. They've got to be combined because this is only one teaching station. Other than that, from my point of view, again, this is C building. We are in C building, what we consider C building. It's from the 1950s. Again, this is the latter part of the 1950s. But again, it's still a steam heated system. It has the same issues essentially that A and B have. It's just very difficult to maintain a facility of this age and structure.
So we're here now in the D building, which is used for science classrooms, and we're here in a science lab, D102. And I noticed some change from when I was in high school. We have, tell me about this structure right here going.
This again is a retrofit. This is a gas line coming in for the lab. And if you look up here as well, you'll see all these hanging things. This is electrical for microscopes, whatever they need them for. And again, we had to retrofit these classrooms just like we did the A, B, and C building. This building was built in the early 60s. D and E were built in the early 60s. But again, they still are not built for the type of education that is going on today.
Yeah.
Some of the issues that we have in the labs obviously are physical, just in the size of the labs alone. They are nowhere near large enough for the types of things that are trying to be done today in our STEM program. In addition, anything that needs to be maintained, the univents, the different systems, electrical, plumbing, it's 40, 45 years old. So it's very difficult to deal with those. Okay. This is the one elevator for Stoughton High School. It's on the outside edge of D building. So it will get you to the first floor of D, and then from there you have to cross all the way across. If you're going to, say the high school office, you would have to cross the entire building to get to the high school office. If you came to D second, to go to A second, where the high school office is. The elevator as it's set up now is not ADA compliant. It's too small, but we're grandfathered in. It's here. It's still working. So, but again, as we discussed earlier, A4 is not accessible by this elevator or by any elevators. So that entire floor is not ADA compliant.
So we're ending our tour here in the E building, which along with the D building is actually the newest part of the school, and yet that's still 50 years old. So the E building on the first floor is used for the sciences, and there's some administrative offices, and then on the second floor it's for the arts. So here in just finishing up this tour, it seems like some common words I've heard: retrofit.
Correct. And
that the systems in place, electrical especially, and from a technological standpoint, you've really had to adapt to the 21st century in a building that a lot of it is in the first half of the 20th century.
Correct. Everything from fire alarm, PA system, clock system, as we mentioned, all the IT infrastructure, even things such as plumbing, HVAC controls, networks, pneumatic controls, all basically had to be retrofitted into these buildings. And the 64 product, being D&E, really don't meet up well with the 50s and the 20 buildings. So it's a challenge trying to get everything to blend in and work as one system. In other words, throughout the entire building when they were put in phases.
And it's one thing you really can't tell from a video tour is just the building, kind of the maze-like setup of this building, and how it doesn't really flow from one building. They're called, as you said, buildings for a reason. They seem to be almost 5 separate schools put into one.
Exactly, and that's one of the issues that the administration has brought up, is that the additions that were put on based on where they would fit rather than how they fit. And they don't really fit well together to make a complete building. If you've driven to Stoughton High School, it's very difficult to find the front entrance to Stoughton High School just because of the different layouts and the way the buildings were put together.
And just kind of final to wrap it up, the tour is when you're looking ahead and you're part of the school building committee looking at the next steps for Stoughton High School, working with the MSBA. When you're talking a new building or possible renovation addition, what are some of the challenges to using this existing building potentially as part of a new Stoughton High School?
Well, Obviously, if we're talking an addition and renovation, it's going to have to be a total gut. So you're going to have to take everything out right back to the walls, to what they call the bones of the building, back to the steel, or in the case of A building, if A building stays, it's back to the wood, and start all over again. The issue, we still have to deal with the issue of the infrastructure, the two water systems coming in from both sides, the electrical that comes into the A building and is fed underground to D&E. And the other issue with the addition renovation is, where is the swing space? Where do we put the kids for the 4 or 5 years that some people have said it's going to take to renovate this building? With a new building, obviously, when you buy a new building or get a new building, everything is up to code. Everything is to today's standards. It's one building. It should all work together. So from my point of view, from my position, I would much prefer a new building, but that's just my opinion.
Well, thank you, Joel. I appreciate the time, and thank you
problem.
for taking us on this tour.
Thank you.
So I'm back here after our tour to give you the latest update in the Stoughton High building project and where it stands right now. So I'm joined by 3 members of the Stoughton High Building Committee, a group that's comprised of professionals from all different fields. And Joel, I'll let you introduce our panel.
Okay, I'm Joel Walk, and I am the Vice Chairman of the Stoughton High School Building Committee. As you said, we're comprised of members of the school department and town government, plus a number of volunteers. There are 11 of us that are voting members. One of them, of course, is a member of the school committee. With us today are our consultants. The first is Dom Taberi, who is from Compass Project Management, and they are the owner's project manager. They will be the person, or our point person. I like to think of them as the building committee staff to make sure that the job gets done correctly. And they are here on behalf of the town to make sure that everything is done properly, as well as coordinate work with the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which is the primary funding agency, and Scott Wooden, who is with the design firm of Drummond Rosane Anderson, D.R.A., and they are the architects who have been selected for the project.
Well, I guess it would be great to kind of outline the aggressive timeline that you have of benchmarks that you would like to meet this coming school year, really starting right in September. So if you could kind of tell us about those 3 key points in the project's trajectory, that would be great.
If I can just go back real quick, just say we were brought on board in February. D.R.A. was brought on board, I believe, the beginning of May. That's correct. Aggressive schedule right from the start. We did look at right from the very beginning, looked at multiple sites throughout the Stoughton area as possible locations for future school. And as we've gone through that process, we've kind of drilled down to really looking now more at the existing Pearl Street site for possible, add reno or a possible new school. Right now, we're going through the process of what is the preferred design process. We have, D.R.A. has done quite a bit. We've been very fortunate to have D.R.A., a firm that's done many schools, is going through a lot of feasibility work, but also visioning sessions and looking at space summaries, and as you've just come back from your facilities walk, looking at the existing facilities, et cetera. So our plans are to, we're in the midst right now of Dr. Rizzi and Principal Miller putting together an education plan that dovetails into the space that's going to be designed for the future new Stoughton High School. We're hoping that we have all of that information done by the end of August so we can present to the school committee for their input and their approval. And then we'll be presenting that preferred design to the Mass School Building Authority. The next step actually would be that we'll drill down to a schematic, I believe a schematic, right, Scott? Schematic submission, which will be much more detailed, which we will present to the Mass School Building Authority, and prior to that, it'll have to be accepted by the town of Stoughton, by the school committee, by the school building committee, the selectmen, et cetera, to be presented to the MSBA by December. Going from there, I think Scott, I'm going to leave it to Scott because there's a lot of work that from that point to the time that we bring to the town of Stoughton for approval.
Just to touch on before we go there, the December benchmark, if I'm not mistaken, by that time, we will know what goal the school building committee has and what the MSBA would like to see in terms of whether this would be a completely new construction, addition renovation, and a rough design of what that school might look like. And where it would be, correct?
Yeah, if I could just clarify, these first two steps in the process are part of the feasibility study that go from now and through December. So right now, we're developing the educational specification, which is basically a narrative that explains what the educational goals are of the school. So it outlines in narrative form what the architecture is going to respond to educationally. It also includes an outline of how big the building is going to be and how that square footage is subdivided into different spaces, again, carefully coordinated with the educational spec that the principal and the superintendent are developing. And it also identifies the alternate options that we're going to be looking at during the next phase. So that's what we do through September. From September through December, we focus in on those different options and alternatives, and we develop them to a degree that we understand how each of the different options can respond to and accomplish the educational program, the educational specification, how much they're going to cost, and establish other criteria for which one will be the preferred option. So in December, the goal is that we, together with the building committee and with the owner's project manager, we've come forth and we've established this one is the preferred alternative, and this is the one that we're recommending to the town and to the state, to the MSBA, and then they have to approve that. That's the milestone in December.
Right, so then take me to the third milestone, which might be the most important milestone in this whole project, and that's getting the approval from the town meeting and ultimately the voters. So can you kind of walk me through? That would be the spring of 2016. So could you walk me through what the town residents can expect then?
Well, I can start with what the architectural team and the design team are going to do in the beginning of the year next year, which is the third submission to the MSBA is the schematic design submission. So in schematic design, now we've established and gotten a successful authorization from the MSBA to proceed into schematic design. Now we're going to be developing the floor plans in much more detail. We're going to understand the massing of the building, what the gesture of the building is going to be on the site. We'll develop computer-rendered models as well as physical models of the entire site with the building placement on the site or the development of the addition renovation scenario. And those are the options. Just to go back, we don't know right now whether what this project is going to look like. It could be a renovation of the existing facility. It could be a renovation addition, maintaining different portions of the existing building, or it could be new construction on the site. So all of those will be explored during the next phase, but as we move into schematic design, then we'll develop the floor plans, the building design, the exterior building materials. You'll really get an idea of what the building looks like and a very realistic idea of what the building is going to cost, whether in whichever scenario it is. We'll have some very realistic cost estimates and design of building systems such as mechanical systems, the site design. All of that will be very well developed by the time that we get to May of next year.
And then can you talk about the voting process and what needs to be approved by town meeting and the voters and when that would be taking place?
Yes, at the end of the schematic design, as Scott put it, we actually have a very good idea of what we're going to do, and because of that, that gives us the option to tell us what we believe this is going to cost. And Compass Project Management will also have an estimate, and the architect will have an estimate. We'll compare the two estimates and make sure they're on the same page. If we're all in agreement, then we know how much money needs to be appropriated in order to get the project done, and that hopefully will be done so that it can be acted on at the May town meeting. If not, there may be a special, but we're not sure how that's going to work.
It's too far down
to
right.
really talk about. There's two things that have to happen. One is it has to be approved at town meeting, and secondly, there has to be a debt exclusion vote because of the amount of money that has to be borrowed in order to do that. What happens with the state is they issue what's called a project scope and budget report. Correct me if I'm incorrect on this. And in that, they basically said, okay, this is what you're going to build, and here's how much it's going to cost. And once the MSBA agrees that they'll fund that, then the municipality, I want to say, has 120 days. I think this is what it is, to actually respond and say, we agree. We're going to vote it in town meeting, and we're going to get the debt exclusion vote. And when that happens, in the second quarter of, say, of next year, then that'll allow us to go ahead and actually start construction. So that's what the timetable looks like right now.
Right, and so there's obviously a lot of decisions to be made and studying to be done over the course of the next several months, and this just kind of gives you a taste of what the school building committee will be working on over the course of the next school year. Let's talk specifically about a couple of things that you're working on right now, and we'll start with the education plan and how that we just saw in the tour a lot of the shortfalls from a structural standpoint in the building, but you obviously have to take into account the educational component as well. So how does that play into a factor from an architect's standpoint of designing a school? And what are you working on during this educational plan right now?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question and a very complicated answer. But when we look at when we look at the ed plan and the ed specs, it's identifying that, for example, we need X number of stations for the gymnasium to be able to have the number of classes that we need on a daily and on a weekly basis. And it's as simple as looking at the existing facility sometimes and saying, geez, we just don't have enough square footage there. The gymnasium and the athletic facility here is woefully inadequate to be able to respond to the educational program. The music program, and this has kind of been drilled into us over the last couple of months, is how important the music program is to the Stoughton community, and the accommodations that we have in the existing facility are woefully inadequate for the music program. So just simple areas like that. We look at, can those facilities be expanded to be able to accommodate the programmatic requirements with the existing structure? Is there space? Can it be reconfigured, or can it be added onto in a way that is going to make it be able to satisfy the programmatic requirements and be able to do that within the existing facility? And you have to do that with every program. So it's a matter of looking at those types of things to understand whether addition renovation scenarios to the existing building would be feasible or not.
One other component that you've been talking about in recent school building committee meetings has been where to put the building, regardless of what the ultimate option ends up being, whether that's an addition renovation, a complete new construction, and you've looked at everything from the youth soccer fields to the Little League baseball fields to conservation land down on Bird Street to the golf club, Cedar Hill, to this very location right here. And it seems to me that you've definitely made a decision to do it, no matter what this construction ends up being, to do it right here. So what made this campus the most attractive and reasonable place to do this construction?
we developed a matrix including all the sites and all the different criteria that went into measuring whether a site was feasible or not for the school project. And of all the sites that we looked at, and I think there were 11 altogether, all of them, except for one, were excluded for two major reasons. One was that the site just wasn't large enough to accommodate a 204,000 square foot new school facility and its associative athletic fields and parking and circulation. And the others were owned by the city. So that would have been a huge additional cost that the city would have been saddled with if one of those sites was selected. The only other site that was large enough and was city-owned was the conservation land. And in effect, that conservation land, if that was taken for school property, that would have needed to be replicated somewhere else, thus requiring the city to purchase additional land and have that additional cost to the project. So for those few reasons, it was a pretty quick exercise once we had assessed all the sites and measured them and done test fits on those sites. It was a pretty quick exercise to understand that for those reasons, as well as for its central location, for as well as its continued use during the construction project, that this site was the most feasible site for the school project.
Now, within this campus, are you looking specifically at the football field track area, or are you also looking across the way in the access road to the West School field? What's the limit of the scope of where you're looking right now?
Right now, we're looking at the entire site. Right now, we're identifying zones that could potentially be studied, and we're delineating restrictions on this property, such as setbacks, utility easements, anything that would preclude building in that particular area. So we'll identify the buildable zone on the site, and then we'll start looking at massing studies on the site to see what their impact what their impact is on our overall site development requirements, and certainly on abutting properties. We don't want to build too close that we're overshadowing or creating a poor context relationship to the streets or to the fabric of the community and the abutters properties right around the school property. So that'll be studied very closely as we start to identify different locations on the site that we might be constructing. And it would also be studied if we were looking at an addition renovation scenario for the existing building.
And just to add, we're also, while D.R.A. is doing those options, we'll have to also see how the impact is to the student body here and faculty going forward too.
Sure, no matter what your choice ends up being, and I keep stressing that there's nothing that's been decided yet in terms of what that option will be, but you're looking at possible displacement of sports teams or even, the student body itself.
So there's much logistics involved, not just the building of the building, but how we have to interact for the next 2-3 years with some of the facilities that are existing.
And getting, way far ahead, but just in general, because you've worked on projects of this scope before, how long is a building process like this usually take? Like when the shovel goes in the ground for the first time till you open, how long could it take?
Well, it always depends on what we're doing. An ad reno in phasing could be 3.5 years. A brand new building could be 24 to 28 months. So, it'll come to the design.
It's one of the factors we have to look at, too.
Yeah.
Sure. So, with that, before I wrap up, I'd like to just ask the public, if you could say how anybody interested out there, how they would like to get involved in this process or be able to follow this process further, how they might be able to do so.
The building committee wants to make this include as much as we can and get people involved, and so everybody understands what's going on and can ask questions. The public forum at the beginning of June I was at, I thought turned out great. A lot of people came in, had a lot of good ideas.
And I think once we get to a point where we really know where we're going with the design and what the ultimate decision has been made, we may be taking it on the road, so to speak, not just the community forum, but go to different locations and talk to parents at the elementary school level and middle schools and PTOs, maybe some of the clubs in the area also, et cetera. So.
Well, again, as you can see, there's a lot to come this school year with the Stoughton High building project. 3 important benchmarks to be met, starting one in September. So, Joel, Dom, Scott, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to sitting down with you again as the project continues to progress and giving further updates to the town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you.
And for one last time, I'm Jeffrey Pickette. Thanks for tuning in to Stoughton Spotlight. We'll see you next time.